We know it all started off with a hyped-up Fury versus Joshua fight, but let's just say Tyson Fury literally pummeled Derek Chisora when he tried to stop the brave but hopelessly outclassed challenger in the 10th round at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on December 3rd. In this video, we're going to talk about how Fury's shifting his focus towards Usyk after his dominating performance, so stay tuned. First up, it was a pretty dangerous fight for Derek Chisora. Alright, so we know that Chisora has been in far too many battles for his own good, and this time he was saved when the referee Victor Loughlin decided to finally step in and bring the horrible beating to a merciful ending. Fans believe he could have stopped it way earlier than he did, but it turns out Don Charles, Chisora's trainer, absolutely denied rescuing his own fighter. On top of that, Fury kissed his opponent and friend outside the ring in what we'd call admiration, and soon enough you could hear the crowd chanting Chisora's name in appreciation for all he was able to tolerate. Let's not forget that his right eye was literally sealed shut, and he was still bleeding from his mouth at the time. Despite the crowd booing shamefully when the fight ended, we think that a lot of people are starting to realize the dangerous damage that had been done to Chisora's brain after Fury's vicious punches landed with surprising accuracy. All in all, it was a pretty dangerous fight to say the least. And while we already knew how hyped Fury was for this fight, especially after Joshua backed out from the original one, we didn't think he'd end up causing so much damage to his opponent. Following up, Fury definitely enjoyed his third victory. Now, this was the third time the two boxers had met in the ring. In fact, that's why it was hyped as the trilogy. After Fury had won both their previous fights, he decided to bring an end to the depressing trilogy with another victory. All in all, it was Chisora's 13th defeat in the last 46 fights he's been in. And this time, there were some serious health concerns. In fact, it's up to the point that we're questioning whether he should even continue to box or not. As for the Gypsy King, he literally walked out to a soundtrack in which Nick Cave's red right hand got swallowed up by Football's Coming Home as the champion went on with his crowd-pleasing antics. In fact, he was dressed in a red robe and a yellow bobble hat, probably to protect his bald head against the harsh cold. Along with that, Fury got a pretty almighty reception from an excited crowd of over 60,000 people, and it's fair to say he looked like a man mountain, especially when he stripped down to his bright red boxing trunks. Along with that, measuring Chisora with his stinging jab, Fury took full control from the outset. In fact, he went on to pick off his veteran opponent with pretty precise counters, and a withering uppercut seemed to rock Chisora repeatedly. On the other hand, the 38-year-old spread his arms wide in the second, suggesting that he could take every single punch from Fury. Needless to say, he was definitely made to suffer for his grit. Not to mention, Chisora barely made it to the 9th round. By the 3rd round, Chisora literally had to hold the top rope to somehow steady himself. Honestly, at this point, we just think he was probably already concussed. And let's talk about Charles, who, in the challenger's corner, responded to all of this by slapping Chisora's face in a dubious effort to somehow motivate him to push back an incredibly dominant Fury. On the other hand, what he really seemed to need was some medical attention. As for the 4th round, Chisora came in with intent, but it looked like the Gypsy King had already decided to give himself and his rival a merciful breather. But it wasn't long until he returned to his artful butchery for the next 2 rounds. It was literally just one blow after another for Chisora, who was just trying to get past it now. Now, by the 6th round, the fight could have easily stopped. If anything, it gave off every single sign hinting at a merciful end, because any hopes of Chisora making a comeback with a lucky punch had literally disappeared into the bitter cold. Moving on, by the 8th round, the boxer could hardly see anything from his right eye, and his mouth was filled with blood. At this point, the referee had enough and started to get pretty concerned about the stakes here. So, by the end of round 9, Loughlin warned Charles that the fight couldn't go on much longer. And while this was the perfect opportunity for the trainer to show some compassion, he insisted that he was in charge of his own fighter. Coming up, there's a lot of hype for Fury's upcoming fight. Let's just say that he came out punching with incredible but pretty senseless valor, as Loughlin had his eyes set on the Zimbabwe-born Londoner. In fact, another right uppercut shook the fighter to his very core. At this point, his swollen face was still an impassive mask, as Fury nailed him again and again and again, right until Loughlin finally jumped in to bring this to an end. And while all of this has been quite the roller coaster, as we hope Chisora is getting the medical attention he desperately needs, there's a far more meaningful fight waiting for Fury. Yep, we're talking about the one with the undefeated Alexander Usyk that's set to happen next year. While this was an expected trilogy victory, the upcoming fight is going to be a final battle to decide the identity of the undisputed world heavyweight champion. On the one hand, Usyk holds the IBF, WBA, and WBO belts, belts, so clearly there's quite a lot at stake here. On top of that, the two champions even met in the ring afterward, and while Usyk cut a picture of steely restraint, Fury yelled and insulted the man who served in the Ukrainian army this year in a real war. In fact, he even went on to call the Ukrainian a little But let's face it, even the Gypsy King is smart enough to know that their fight is going to carry a level of intrigue and excitement, which was completely missing from the mismatch with Chisora. Up next, WBC president says the Fury vs. Usyk fight in 2023 is the perfect time. As for Fury's savage victory, it's nothing new or shocking, but it's definitely left the hope that a badly beaten Derek Chisora is finally going to come to terms with the fact that he should probably move toward retirement to be on the safe side of the ropes. Moving on to the fight with Usyk, Maurizio Sulaiman has already confirmed that WBC is more than happy to support the undisputed clash. But they're also waiting on a final eliminator between the former champions Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz Jr. to finally establish a new mandatory challenger. In fact, Sulaiman said it's the perfect time for unification. On top of that, there has also been speculation that Filip Hrgovic's status as the mandatory challenger for Usyk's IBF title could very well fail any plans for the undisputed bout. On the other hand, the WBC president has also urged other governing bodies to help ensure the Ukrainian meets the Gypsy King with all the belts on the line. After all, we've waited for this fight long enough. At the same time, Sulaiman said hopefully it will not get to that point, and the four organizations will accept to sanction the ultimate undisputed fight and keep it that way. As for mandatories, they're obviously a pretty complicated process. Every organization has its own rules, but let's face it, this fight is more important than any of those rules at this point, or at least that's what the WBC president has to say. So they're doing whatever it takes to make sure the fight becomes a reality. Finally, Joe Joyce might be a potential replacement for Usyk. Did you know that the British heavyweight Joe Joyce was actually at ringside at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium? Well, it turns out that Fury said that he'd be open to fighting him if the Usyk bout can't become a reality. As for Joyce, let's just say he's put together a series of pretty impressive performances to shift himself to the verge of title contention. In fact, the WBC president said that even the WBC wouldn't stand in the way of an all-British matchup with Fury. But let's be honest, do we really want another replacement after we've already been impatiently waiting for the Usyk vs. Fury fight? We don't think so. And when asked if he had any sort of issues with the Fury-Joyce bout, Sulaiman said that as of now, he doesn't because, as he's mentioned, they don't have the mandatory contender yet. But as soon as they get one, they're going to set the timelines. After all, the end goal is to have unification. That's a wrap for this video. What's your take on Fury turning his focus to Usyk after dominating Chisora? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.